Welcome back to the studio. In this part of our Getting Started with Oils class, we're going to look at brushes. I've got a selection of brushes to show you. I'm going to flip the camera around and get you looking at the bench. Here on the bench, I've laid out some different brushes for us to look at, and I've divided them up into two sorts. These are natural bristle, these are synthetic. These brushes, they generally like to be used with oil paint and then washed in a solvent. So something like thinners is the way to wash these brushes. These brushes can be washed in solvent, but they can also tolerate being washed in soapy water. So these really can be used for almost anything. These can be used with acrylics, not these two, they're specialist brushes, but these ones are just general purpose brushes. And as I say, they're bristle, they're very tough and hard wearing brushes, and they're lovely to feel. This one's a brand new brush, hasn't been used yet. These ones have been used a few more times, and you can see they've started to get a bit of staining on them, and the various shapes give you an idea. This is what's called a flat brush. That one's called a filbert brush. It's got a lovely curved end on it, and if anybody cares to check out, filberts are the old English name for hazelnuts. They were called filberts. And right down to small brushes like this little liner brush. Watercolorists will be saying that's a rigger brush, but it's the same sort of brush. It's a fine brush for drawing thin lines. That one, well, no clues. It's called a fan brush, isn't it? Obviously. So these are all bristle brushes. These two in particular are specialist brushes. They're designed to apply oil and to be used to apply paint in a particular fashion. And that's a technique popularized by the American artist Bob Ross. And that's somebody who I've been painting and following and admiring his work for many, many years as a teacher. And I'll be doing some demonstrations with these brushes in my classes. So there's a couple of different sorts. Again, natural bristle brushes, very, very dense, heavy with bristles, and they hold the paint superbly well. These are not your normal decorating brushes. They're very different to these. On the right hand side here, synthetic brushes. These brushes are becoming far more popular and very affordable. You can see the design of them. They look very much like some of the other brushes we have. They're flat, and you can get them in a big wide variety of sizes. You can see they get stained as well. But as I said, these can be washed in soapy water or solvents. So they're very much a dual purpose. They're very hard wearing, and they're remarkably cheap for the quality of them. So you can afford a set of these sort of brushes, probably 2 or 3 of these for the price of maybe one of those or even more. They also come in a variety of sizes. This is a synthetic brush that I've shaped. I've actually trimmed this one because I wanted it to do a particular shape, and I just trimmed it. They're that reasonable in price that you can actually afford to take a bit of a stab at it with a pair of scissors and just trim it and make it into a specialist brush. This is what I've done with that brush. In the middle, palette knives. These are usually metal, but they could be wood, they can be rubber, they could be plastic, but the most traditional sort of knives are these metal bladed knives with a wooden handle on them. They come in a bewildering number of different shapes, but usually a flat bladed knife like that will do nearly everything you want it to do. This one again, a specialist knife. This is a Bob Ross palette knife, a number 10. It's the larger of 2 knives that Bob developed. And again, these are beautifully balanced. They work lovely. And if you saw that little painting I showed you at the end of the canvas demonstration, this is the sort of knife you want to be using for painting those wonderful mountains. And I'll be doing some classes on mountain painting, and I'll be using these palette knives, one this size, to do the demonstration for you. So which ones should you buy? Goodness gracious, I don't know what. If you were doing acrylic, you would probably buy something like these and they will be perfectly fine. If you're going to get serious about oil painting, you'll probably look more towards using these bristle brushes. They're more expensive and they wear out more quickly, but they're just that little bit nicer to use. These sorts of brushes are particular to the Bob Ross technique, and they are specially made for it, but you can use these sorts of brushes with a little bit of practice. You can get very good results. So you don't have to absolutely buy one or t'other. But just remember, if you're going to be using these brushes, consider that you will also have to buy a solvent, something like odourless thinners or something in the house which may not be terribly nice to keep around, whereas these ones, soapy water is perfect.